That's okay, we waited.
It's one of those days and I was supposed to be in judiciary, so.
Well, we didn't start yet, but we will now that you have arrived. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Senate Transportation Committee. Would you do the honors of joining us in the Pledge of Allegiance, Senator Fenton?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome, Senator Carson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to Senate Transportation. For the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, which comprises the towns of Auburn, Londonderry, and Hudson. And I have for your consideration this afternoon Senate Bill 583 relative to including active duty military status on driver's license. This bill came to me from the Department of Safety, and there's a couple of points that I'd like to make here. First of all, the change and the New Hampshire driver's license designation will align active duty military with veterans to confirm their military service. This will allow active duty members to use their driver's licenses when traveling. It will allow New Hampshire active duty military members to use their driver's license when receiving benefits for veterans or active duty members. And the designation on the New Hampshire's driver's license for New Hampshire active duty military members would align with a fee waiver. And I have an email here from Assistant Commissioner Eddie Edwards, and he said due to internal operation adjustments, the effective date will need to be January 1st, 2025. So if you should decide that the committee in its infinite wisdom that you'd like to pass this legislation, could you please make that adjustment to the bill? And at this point, Madam Chair, I'm going to conclude my testimony. I believe there might be some people behind me that would like to testify, and I would like to thank you all for your time and your consideration this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carson. Any questions from the members of the committee? Okay. The chair will call Kevin. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is, for the record, is Kevin Grady. I am a 25-year veteran of our Air Force, and I'm a 25-year resident of the town of Hooksett, New Hampshire. Today I'm here representing the State Veterans Advisory Committee, which is chartered by state RSA. We have 20 member organizations, and we are here to speak for the veterans in our state, and we take a position on all the bills that we see that have veteran impact, and then I come and tell you what that position is. And that's an important thing for me to say right now because bear in mind, I am the messenger of what they had to say, okay? I want to start my testimony by saying that we love Senator Carson. We absolutely love her. And but our veterans on our committee had a little bit of a hard time with this bill because we think $64,000 to change the system is a lot of money. And, you know, you folks deal in figures that are a lot larger than that, but we're all taxpayers too, and we think that that's a lot of money to change the system, to put something in there that relatively speaking affects a fairly small population that we're talking about. And the idea of the veterans benefits, and on our committee, we have a lot of folks who served one tour or two tours, and they're veterans just the same. And when they get that veteran distinction on that license plate, they can go into Home Depot and get 10% off of something that they're buying in Home Depot, and we think that's great. That active duty person has got an active duty ID card sitting in their wallet. Like I have one because I'm a retiree, but it does denote military service. So we think that putting it on the license plate when you've already got the real card in your wallet is a little bit redundant. And the final thing that we talked about is if we have one of our soldiers or one of our sailors or airmen that's stationed overseas and is traveling on vacation, for example, and wants to rent a car, they're going to have to present a driver's license. They might not want the person that they're renting that car from to know that they're actually in the active duty military service. And so if it wasn't on the license plate, obviously, a driver's license, obviously they would be, I'm certain that this kind of legislation, you could choose to or not to put it on your license if you were an active duty member. So we had a hard time with it. I will say this though, especially when you consider that the chair and the vice chair are both sponsors of this bill. If this bill leaves the Senate with a recommendation to pass and goes to the House, I'll have a talk with the troops, and we may be back with a different answer when it goes to the House. And that's really all I wanted to tell you, other than it's great to be back for another season.
Thank you. Thank you for that testimony. Are there any questions? Senator Fenton?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the testimony. How many active duty individuals are there in New Hampshire?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. First off, because there are within the state, there's probably about somewhere between 100 and 150 there will ultimately be. There's an active duty tanker squadron at Pease that has probably 80 to 100 people there. The folks that are at the UNH detachment for college ROTC are on active duty. So cats and dogs, we're probably looking at less than 115, maybe. And then, of course, you have New Hampshire citizens who are in our military, who are stationed around the world, that still have a New Hampshire driver's license that is valid until they return to state, even if it's expired. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
thank you.
The chair will now call Director Marasco and Kathy O'Neill from DMV, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing Kathy and I to speak with you this afternoon. I haven't spoken with Senator Carson directly about this bill, but Assistant Safety Commissioner Eddie Edwards has worked with Senator Carson on this bill. And so we did sign in from the Department of Safety standpoint in support of it. We echo everything that Senator Carson laid out as far as talking points that were provided by Assistant Commissioner Edwards. And as far as from a DMV standpoint, if this bill were to pass, we can implement and would find a way to get the marking onto the license. That's really the extent that we have for testimony, but we're happy to take any questions if you have any.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. The fiscal note, I mean, it's not minor, but compared to a lot of the expenditure to change our system, this is really not that much, and it's kind of in line with what it costs to do something of this scale. So I just wanted to get your opinion about that. It's not an undue burden on the department, is it, to provide that funding?
You know, sir, Senator,
I think it says a $64,000 one-time to change the system, 320 hours of work to an outside vendor at $200 an hour. I mean, that's the calculation the fiscal note said.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
The vision system required a modification to the vision system.
any system change that we have,
Yeah.
I was just upstairs earlier on proposed bills to change title. And it's always going to come in, well, not always, but in many cases come in tens of thousands for changes. So this one here, we like I said, we would find a way to implement and overcome any costs with it. The fiscal note I have on it, when the gentleman who just spoke, I didn't see that figure in here offhand. Oh, here it is, actually. Yep, I got it right here I've got it actually, so, yeah. So the 64,000, yeah. Would find a way.
If I may follow up with that.
Of course.
So, the concern was raised about whether someone could opt out of having their status on here. Would that be possible, or would it just be automatic? I mean, how would that, I mean, I see here, the language, you look at lines 18 to 24, says, you know, male, female, et cetera, X, and then this. Would somebody have to check off a box to say that they are this status to have that on there? So if they
Yes.
chose not to, they could do so?
That's correct, sir.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. It's opt-in.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 583. Come forward, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Warren Perry. I'm the Deputy Adjutant General for New Hampshire Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services. Originally, I wasn't going to make a statement, but I will say that the department supports the bill as written, and I just would like to correct the record. We have a census of approximately 1,123 active duty service members in the state. And just for clarity, and because there are lots of different statuses of military members, there are about 5,750 reservists and National Guardsmen. So between the, all the Navy Reserve, Army Reserve, Marine Corps Reserve, and the National Guard, about 5,750, and then about 94,000 veterans. So just for kind of context, that helps. So just kind of correct that part of the record.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or, okay, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
I'll ask again, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 583? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 583. And we have to wait a couple minutes before we open the next hearing.
Amazing. He's actually correct for the first time in years.
Yeah, I know.
I was a little slow. Oh, I see, okay. Pardon? I think we're okay. Let me ask you questions about
I just figured I'd.
Oh, please do. We just have to wait, you know.
That's okay, no, I completely understand. Scheduled 1:15 and 1:14.
So now, is this you or the clone? Because you're in two places at once, right?
Yeah, this is me, David.
Okay, all right.
Senator Waters.
That's good. Artificial intelligence.
Trying to be in 3 different places at the same time, and Mom, I'm used to it.
Yeah, there you are.
So your son is doing well, he's healed?
He's got an injury he's working on, but he's gonna be okay. It's frustrating.
He had a
Yeah.
video on him dancing
Yeah.
thing about, no boot, he's doing
Yeah,
great.
it takes a long time.
Yeah, it does.
He can do the things normal people do, but the next step.
Yeah.
Okay, we can open the hearing on Senate Bill 468. Welcome back again, Senator Carson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And again, good afternoon, members of the Senate Transportation Committee. My name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn, which is Senate District 14. And I'd like to present for your consideration Senate Bill 468, which is relative to designating a portion of Route 111 in Hudson as the Senator Robert E. Clegg Jr. Memorial Highway. Madam Chair, this is difficult for me because Senator Clegg was the senator of the district before me, and he was my mentor. He wasn't only my mentor, but he was a friend. And Bob gave himself so many different places. He was very, very active in his community. When he passed, he was a member of the Budget Committee. He was not only a state representative in the 1990s, but he was also served the district for 3 terms. He ran for Congress. He took maybe a year. I don't even think it was a year. And he opened up a lobbying firm, and he was just one of those faces that was here all the time. And he was someone that people on both sides of the aisle would work with, and that was Bob. If the issue was good and it was important, it didn't matter. It was working with everyone to get good things done for the people of the state of New Hampshire. Unfortunately, his passing was very sudden and extremely unexpected for many people. And it was only after he passed that we really started learning about all the other things that he did. He was a quiet philanthropist, and he would help people. Veterans were an important cause for him, as well as anybody who was down on their luck and needed a helping hand. He would never ask to be repaid. He just saw someone in need who needed help. And that really was, in my opinion, something that signified his life. He was one of those helpers. He would help people. He was constantly giving of himself. And so I thought about a good way to commemorate him. You know, you could put up a portrait in the State House commemorating him, but I thought it would be more appropriate to name a section of Route 111 running through his community, so every day people could see that sign and be reminded of him in the community that he loved and he gave so much to. There was something else too. He had recently become a grandfather, and I had many conversations with him, and he talked constantly about the things he wanted to do with his granddaughter, the places he wanted to go and take her, and the things he wanted to show her. And what I ultimately would like would be her traveling through the town of Hudson and be able to point at that commemorative sign and say, that's my papa, that's my papa, and have that connection with his family, that he's here and he mattered, and he made significant changes that affected the people in the state of New Hampshire. So I think I'm going to stop right now. I did talk to the family. The family is very supportive of them, of this happening. So I know that there's a cost associated with this, and the last time I had a portion of a road named for someone, I volunteered to pay for it, so there will be no cost to the state. So I will fund the cost of the signs. So thank you very much, and I will answer any questions anyone has.
Members of the committee?
Thanks for doing this.
Oh.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, and, you know, I am so sorry for such a great loss.
I think we all are. I know I pull into my parking spot, and for years I would look over right at the state library, and he'd have his big truck there. And it hits me every time I pull in now, and I look over just automatically, and the truck is not there. The impact he had was just, I mean, as time goes on, the institutional knowledge this man had of this place and things and people, you could always rely on him. And he was not afraid to stand up for what he believed in. He hated bullies, and he just stood. He stood for what he believed in. And I think that's important. And it's a great legacy to leave.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We have Representative Robert Wary. I said that right? Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I just want to, first, I will not be as eloquent as Senator Carson, but I just want to make a couple of comments in support of this bill, as well as echo that from my colleagues in Hudson. Hudson is represented by 6 representatives, as well as 2 from the Floterial shared with Litchfield. So I didn't know Bob as a senator. I knew him as the guy I sat with at the charity auction for Presentation of Mary Academy, where he would buy cakes for $200 or $300, and then we would have to eat them all.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. Too bad. He was my neighbor over the hill. We shared a large or moderate forest, I suppose, between our 2 properties. And he was so modest, I didn't know he was a senator the first couple of charity auctions. He never mentioned that. He said, "Hi, I'm Bob." Not, "Hi, I'm Senator," or anything. He was very unassuming and modest. As Senator Carson said, he was generous beyond belief. This is the kind of example. We think of the big films with our superheroes. Well, we have minor heroes serving all around us, and he's one of my minor heroes, who is just such a fine example. Sometimes we would share breakfast in the cafeteria over in the State House, and I'd ask him what advice would he give me. He said, "Well, never go back on your word," because that's the kind of person he was. Honest, keep your word, do that sort of thing. So I want to echo Senator Carson's endorsement of this. I didn't know she was bearing all the cost. If that's the case, I'll talk to her about sharing it. But I would beg for your indulgence with this bill, and please help make Bob Clegg a fine example to the community through this memorial sign on this highway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 468? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on 468. And since the next hearing is not until 1:30, I'd like a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. I'd like a motion on Senate Bill 468.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to consent?
Senator Carson, would you like to speak about this on the floor?
No, that's okay.
All right.
Just in the interest of time.
Okay, I'll move consent.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Who would like to take it out? All right, Senator Ward will take it out.
Or do the other one? I'd like to move Senate Bill 583. And I'd like to move on to pass.
We have to change the date.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, a second?
And I'd like to move a committee amendment that would change the effective date to 1/1/25. I move that. Committee amendment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll move on to pass as amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent.
Second? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Do we have a veterans committee?
not me.
I'll take it out.
Okay, Senator Waters will take it out. I'm just gonna go back, close the executive now. All right, I'm gonna now make the motion. Are you caught up, Sophie? I want to give you.
Okay, Sophie,
Okay, all right.
thank you.
If we go a little fast, let me know, because I tend to talk fast. We will
Move on to exec.
move out of executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And can't do anything for 5 minutes.
It's nice to see a bill for Clegg right away. That's
Yeah,
nice.
it is nice.
So,
We need some of those good
he did
feels.
some good things for me. I mean, we were often diametrically opposed some of the gun stuff, but he helped me out.
Well, that's good. And it was very untimely, you know.
Well, it always is when you think
Well,
about it.
thank you. Here we are. That's good. Look how efficient we are. We went over time, we
Well,
looked at
Jeff,
each other.
as you said, Jeff wants the bill. Well,
So,
so
but-
what the boss says, we do.
Right. Well, we just got two right out of the gate there. I wasn't sure with the date change. I'm glad you said you could just do it that way real quick. Yeah. All right.
Oh, we have that other one too. I guess the channel, we'll do that. Oh, we were out. We'll do it.
Yeah,
I got
Pam.
the channel.
Oh, yeah, we have
Oh,
to
no,
go.
the Prentice.
Prentice,
I'm sorry,
Prentice.
Prentice.
Yeah, and he's got his, but I didn't think we had enough time to do that. Maybe we could have.
We'll do it.
I want to at least get those two done and maybe my tea berry, and then we can.
No, we can see. I mean, we're gonna
Something.
I mean,
Geez, you just opened up my eyes. Dave.
We'll just ask. I'll just ask.
Yeah.
I just.
Oh, right, because then every that's a precedent. Yeah. Good question. Yeah, 5 minutes. You can get caught up, Sophie.
What are you driving today? Subaru Forester. Oh, okay, I should have known that. At least I said. Are you a dealer or is that you?
Dealer.
Oh, you are a dealer. I bought Subarus religiously for my wife too.
Well, you're in a Honda, that's good.
They fell behind on electric vehicles.
Oh, sorry. We have
They've
this.
got a good one coming in, don't they?
We have it now. It's called a Solitaire.
Yeah, I've seen that. I read about it.
You know, it's
It looks like a good car.
yeah, you know.
And what is it, for what, a couple hundred miles? Maybe?
Yeah, they're all under street.
They're in the lower range of 200.
Yes.
They look like a good car. It's like-
Yeah, you know,
So whose battery pack are they using? Toyota or-
Yes.
Yeah.
they don't own 100%.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see how each company is making its own timeline. It's Honda fell right on. They made that their bigger.
Well, you know,
It's premature. Pardon?
Toyota has a fully hydrogen car. That's legal in California.
Yeah, no, I mean, but they made a bet on it, it just was
Yeah.
premature.
You know, and Toyota did a good job investing in hydrogen
Yeah.
Actually, I got a video of hybrid.
I think this, the hybrid thing, I still think it's a false allegory. I don't think.
Show you a video.
But, I mean, I have one, and I understand, but I still think that the trend is gonna overtake primarily because of what's happening in China and Europe, that it's gonna be hard for the US automakers not to, within a certain amount of time, really beat them off. I don't see that this is gonna happen, hybrid cars. Being sold
I might disagree.
in 12, 10 years from now,
I might disagree.
we'll see. We'll see.
I got something to show you about that.
What?
For 583, that was the license.
Yeah.
Consent.
Yeah, we did. I did. Yeah, I did.
Did you catch who seconded it?
Who seconded the move on consent for the veterans?
That was, you did, Senator Trent?
I think so.
I think so,
it
yeah.
was, Yeah, I knew something by right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's double check.
Okay, let's see. Almost. One more minute. Good afternoon. We will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 511. Welcome, Senator Chanley. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to you and the members of the Transportation Committee. I think I just switched places with Senator Carson, who has headed back over to Judiciary, which I left, and we crossed the street together. So I appreciate you hearing this bill from me today, but I wanted to also let you know, while I do have 3 bills in this committee, my Judiciary Committee is meeting as well. So my name is Shannon Chandley, and I serve the people of Amherst, Merrimack, Milford, and Wilton, who make up Senate District 11. The first bill that I am introducing to you now is Senate Bill 511. And this bill is intended to help with the salt reduction on the snow removal procedures for a portion of roadway that is maintained by the state, not the town of Merrimack. There are a number of people here who can tell you with in much better detail and scientific term than I can about the problem as it exists and why this is the solution. But I will say that this has been an issue for several years. It has gotten worse over time. We know that Merrimack has been faced with some tremendous challenges in the area of water pollution and water contamination. They have had to close wells due to PFAS contamination, and they have also had to shut down wells due to salt contamination. This bill sets out a procedure that would that seeks to reduce the salt that would be used in this area, so to protect the environment, and in doing so, protect the citizens of Merrimack who are already exposed to dangerous chemicals, and this is just another dangerous chemical that folks are very, very concerned about. The water is managed by the Merrimack Village, at least the portion we're talking about, the Merrimack Village District. And I think there are people from Merrimack Village District who can speak to the specifics. I am happy to answer any questions that I can, but I really do believe that the bulk of your questions would be best answered by the people who are dealing with this on a daily basis. So thank you very much, and that is what I have to offer.
Any questions from the committee members? I'll have one, and I
Yes.
think maybe you can answer it. Senator Chanley, so I toured the plant in Merrimack in the summertime with Ron Miner, and it was done very nicely, and it was very expensive. You could see for all the different things that they had to put in place. Would passing this bill help to not have a loss to what has been implemented at the plant?
I don't think that passing this bill would have any kind of detrimental effect on the MVD.
Not detrimental by meaning if you don't pass it.
Yes. Oh, yes. You know, right now there is, I mean, there is absolutely, not passing it is costly to the Merrimack Village District. It's costly to the people of Merrimack, and it's costly to the environment of Merrimack.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to introduce.
The chair will call Donald Provencher, please. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. I am Donald Provencher. I am the current chair of the Merrimack Village District. So the Merrimack Village District is a water district. It's funded entirely by the customers of our water system. We provide water to almost the entire town of Merrimack and a portion of Bedford. So as Senator Chanley indicated, Merrimack MVD, Merrimack Village District, MVD for short, has been faced with a lot of PFAS treatment costs. We spent upwards of tens of millions of dollars and built 3 PFAS treatment plants. We are paying bonds on those for over 20 years. During that process, one of the wells that we intended to put the PFAS treatment on, we decided that we needed to abandon that well, well 3, because of the extremely elevated sodium and chloride in that well. We felt that spending the money for the PFAS treatment of that well would be a risk because of the salt concentration in that well. So basically that well has been abandoned. We're no longer using it, and we had to spend an additional $2 million to find a new well, number 9, to replace that well 3. So we have already incurred some serious cost in dealing with the sodium and chloride issue. It's in all of our wells. We actually have 6 active wells. It's in all of our wells. This bill really focuses on 2 of the 6 wells. It's in the watershed of 2 of the 6 wells. Those 2 wells combined provide about 50% of our water. So I think this is a good start in kind of, identifying this one location where, the bill proposes to implement certain measures with the use of brine as opposed to crystallized road salt. Looking in the literature for brine use, you can reduce your salt consumption significantly. I've seen reports as low as 10% to 20% of the brine. The brine uses 10 to 20% of the salt load that crystallized salt uses. So using brine would be a significant reduction in the application of the total amount of sodium and chloride. So the length of roadway we're talking about here in this bill, which includes Industrial Drive, a portion of Industrial Drive and a portion of Continental Boulevard, which is in the well recharge area for wells 2 and 9. It's about 1.5 miles worth of roadway. So the information you read in that bill, the temperatures that it discusses about using brine, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and below that, the bill does provide provisions for using crystallized salt because brine is not effective at the very low temperatures. So this is not an outright ban on the use of crystallized salt. It's just making sure it's used at the right time in the right conditions. And there's been a challenge for about at least over 3 years or so now. We've created a salt mitigation committee. And we've just invited stakeholders, some local landowners in the area, the town officials and the DOT. And we've had probably about 6 or 7 meetings over those 3 or 4 years. And recently, we've just received a watershed grant through the DES to make this formalize more, to start building a watershed plan that includes all of the stakeholders. 2 months ago, there was a meeting, and the DOT presented sort of their procedures on what they're planning on implementing. As you know, they're faced with challenges with maintaining staff positions there. They're short on staff. But they did propose basically all the things that you're reading in the bill, the temperature and the application of brine when it's favorable and when it's not. We actually took those numbers that the DOT recommended that they were going to implement and put those in the bill. So really what this bill is doing is it's just sort of memorializing what the intent, that the goal that DOT is looking for. And I think it's important that we memorialize this legislatively just to ensure, over years there's turnover in staff, there are changes in policies. We've already seen effects in our other wellhead areas where there were implementations done where the local stakeholders in the area reduced their salt application. And for about 10 years, it worked great. This is over in the 101A area near Amherst. We have wells out in Hollis. But more recently, those levels have started to come up pretty dramatically again. So I think memorializing this is a way to keep the stakeholders, especially DOT on this part of the highways, to understand that this is regulatorily something that they need to keep up on, basically. So when staff changes and things like that, there's always, this memorializes that situation. I've provided you guys with copies of graphs here. If you have them in front of you, you can see basically in all cases on all of these graphs, the red line is chlorides, the blue line is sodium. There's a significant upward trajectory. Some of these graphs go back to 1992, where the chlorides were around 50. And, more recently, in the last couple years, we're up over 550. So what was at 50 is at 550. That's the well we had to close. But if you look through all of these 6 charts, you're going to see similar patterns here. And what we have at risk here is the tens of millions of dollars that we are going to be paying over the next 20 years. Whether those treatment plants need to be, dismantled and abandoned because the sodium's too high, we're going to be paying those bills for 20 years. So this is a dire situation. This, in my mind, as far as cost to the MVD, is even more important than PFAS because there's no treatment process that removes salt here at this scale. You're talking reverse osmosis, which is 5 times more than the money we've already spent out here. So it's extremely important to MVD. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood the background there. And that's really all I have to say. I sent an email with these graphs as well, and there's some additional information in those emails. I won't bother to present because it's already in the email. So, thanks.
Senator Waters.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming in. And poor Merrimack, you know, I get it.
I hear you.
So I had, I'll ask the DOT some questions because we'd like to have them talk to this too, but,
Sure.
You know, there's a lot of detail here where it seems a little bit like micromanagement. I'm not sure it belongs in statute, but one I wanted to ask you about in particular was that the MVD would be the one who signs off on whether a contractor can be used. That to me seems rather odd, and I wonder
It
why
is
that was
odd.
necessary.
There is a reason in there. My understanding is because some of the staff shortages, they have been using subcontractors out there. And on several occasions, you know, we've noticed just a tremendous amount of salt left behind on the roadways and the gutters at the intersections. So some of that may be as a result of some of the contractors. I don't know that there's a necessity to be what they call Green Snow Pro certified, which is a certification for salt applicators. So the reason that MVD wanted to have that particular clause in the bill is, you know, there are some local contractors who have been using brine on Continental Boulevard on private parking lots, and they know what they're doing. We're not saying that we would be, you know, recommending to use them necessarily, but I think we would like to have an interest in who the subcontractor would be if DOT intends on using subcontractors, so we can kind of vet them ourselves, see if they are Green Snow Pro certified, that type of thing. I just think it's a little bit more oversight, and we're willing to accept that responsibility.
If I may follow up, you know, I mean, there's a larger question if this were a town road, you could do whatever you wanted on it. Does the town of Merrimack currently do brining on other roads?
I don't think they do. They do limited salt application and no salt roads basically in town. This particular stretch of Continental, it does continue beyond where the DOT owns, and it does continue where the town owns. We are working with them right now. They have actually applied some of the brine onto some roadways. So I think they're just in the process now of formalizing where the town is going to start using brine as well. So they're on the same page as we're trying to get the DOT on the same page as well. But
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
know that they've actually started with the brine.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. And before we continue with the list, could we have the Department of Transportation come up and answer a few questions, please?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is John Corcoran.
Could you turn your mic on, please? You just hit the red button.
My name is John Corcoran. I'm in the Bureau Administrator, Bureau of Turnpikes.
Madam Chair, ask a few questions. Correct, I'm just trying to remember, this is the section of roadway that we built and the town didn't want to take it over a few years ago, and we're still maintaining it, right?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I asked a question a little bit earlier about whether we want in statute all these requirements, and I won't ask you to go through each one of them, but if you do brining, you kind of know the conditions under which you brine, and you have your department standards of the mix and when to use it and what temperature and so on?
Yes. Well, we pre-treat the roadway before a storm comes in, and that's typically with brine. During a storm, we will pre-wet our salt. We've never just brine roadways during storms and stuff. So some of this bill is very new to us. And in my testimony, we think this bill is too restricted how you got to treat the roadway, because a lot of factors go into when you're treating the roadway temperature, wind, how the wet snow, dry snow. So we've never just treated roadways with brine. And we have, as a testimony before me, noted that parking lots treated with brine. We have seen that. We've been through seminars and hear about it. But it's a little different than a roadway when people are traveling 35, 40 miles an hour, you know, and can turn to ice real quickly when you're introducing water.
And if I could ask you about the physical note, it's 415,000 next year and 177,000 for probably each year thereafter forever. Do you have any sense of where you'd find that money?
There is no financial backing on this bill. We don't not have the money. If we had to do this, we would have to cut other programs within our operations.
And if I may ask, just a couple more.
Feel free, Senator.
So I raised the question earlier about the approval of the Merrimack Village District. I mean, if you could if you had to do this in subcontract, you'd probably rather do that than spend the 400 to buy a truck, wouldn't you? Or
If we could subcontract Continental Boulevard and Industrial Drive, we would. You know, we've tried to do that.
and then you do the Snow Pro certification, don't you? With
Some staff go to it, but that's more, it's, Snow Pro, I believe, is more directed towards the parking lot treatments and stuff. I think
All right, I understand.
DS is gonna involve that into more of a municipal DOT thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I, my,
Yes.
Thank you for being here and taking my question. Just looking through other states, a lot of states are moving towards reducing salt on roadways. And how they're doing that is using that brine mix we just talked about. Is New Hampshire actively looking to reduce the amount of salt we're using on the roads, or perhaps moving towards the more brine solution? It also looks like there's a lot of cost savings there as well, using the brine solution.
we've been using, we've been dealing with brine for several years, especially down in the 93 area. And we use brine we pre-wet our salt. And that's when it comes out of the plow truck, and it wets the salt and it limits the bouncing of the salt on the roadway, so it can contain in the roadway, and it sort of activates the salt. With that, it can reduce the amount of salt we put down into, you know, to activate the salt. We do not go totally brine yet. That's something we have not experienced.
Follow up?
Of course.
Just hearing the testimony, it sounds kind of terrifying that, we have to close some of these freshwater wells and they can't open again. And a direct cause of that could be the salt we're using on the roads. Is DOT maybe a salt reduction task force or something like that? Or do they have any future plans to reduce the salt, or just?
Yes. Can I go over my testimony? As I know I wasn't called up for that.
Gotta get the question. I thought we called them up
it's-
to ask questions.
Yeah.
Well, just that you hadn't signed up to speak, that's why.
Oh, I know I did sign up.
No, you signed up opposed, but you didn't check speak,
Yeah.
and that's why we
Oh,
called
I'm
you.
sorry.
We had to
Oh, I'm
let-
sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
continue as you
Okay,
were.
I do want to testify. I was used to the cards. That's what I was used to.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry. We have been working with the town over the past several months, and we understand their problems and with contamination of the wells and stuff, and with the Village Water District. And we have made steps this year, talking with them. We're limiting our application salt rate that we're using down there to, right now it's at a 250 rate. We are only salting with DOT trucks, so none of our rental trucks, contractor trucks are salting. In the past, they might have salt. And our trucks also have ground speed control spreaders, so that's when they come they slow down, the salt, doesn't come out as fast, or you stop, there's no salt. Whereas other trucks, a lot of our rental trucks, the salt just keeps coming out. So we're eliminating no contractors spreading salt, and we are all pre-treating before the storm. Like, we're going out this afternoon, pre-treating for the storm tonight on the roadway, where in the past we may not have done that. We're just pre-treating this area because it's part of our agreement with them. Our other roads we won't get to, just with the timing and stuff. So we have been working with them, and there's also some other reductions that the town would like. us to implement. And we've asked them through the DOT snow and ice policy, we do agree to make further reductions, but we need sign off from the town municipal officials, the selectmen, the police chief, the fire chief, ambulance service, school board, and in reduction of the salt, because, school buses, everybody gets affected by that. That, we're still working with them. We haven't received that letter yet to do further reductions. As I mentioned, the bill is very prescriptive what you have to do. Like there's no salt up to 20 degrees. Then after 20 degrees, you can use salt. We're not familiar with just using liquids. As I mentioned, the roadway, there's a lot of things that go into what you're describing, how you treat your roadway, depending on the roadway temperature, wind, how wet the snow and dry the snow is. This past storm, when I woke up in the morning, I thought, oh, it's nice and fluffy. But through the night, it was a wet storm. The road was warm. Our guys had to use salt. If not, it would have, become into ice or hard packed snow. So it all depends. And then as the storm goes on, you got to watch how to treat it. And it changes throughout the storm and also where you're located too, in the parts of the state. There are mentioned some things in this bill that there were notes about where you have asked questions about no contractors. We need contractors to help us plow the roadway. We've agreed we will just spread the salt, but we need contractors. We don't have the staffing to help us plow that roadway. There's also mention about pre-treat with pre-wet salt, when it gets below 20 degrees. A lot of times when it's below 20 degrees, that roadway's cold. You do not want to introduce liquid. You do not want a pre-wet salt or anything. A lot of times when it gets down to those colder temperatures, it's a dry snow and we're just plowing. You do not want a liquid because then it can ice right up real quickly. So that's why we think some of this is too prescriptive of how to treat. As asked, there is no financial backing for this, for the new brine truck and stuff. And that would cut other programs. And if this law was passed, we recommend changes to it, and we would work with the town and create an MOA, an agreement of how the anti-icing is going to be done, application rates, types of treatments, and sign-offs, like I mentioned above, from all within the town. That concludes my testimony. Did I answer your question?
So, if I may, you would want a memorandum to work with the town because from what I'm hearing from your testimony, you have concerns for safety about the prescriptiveness of this bill in its current form.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair will now call Representative Nancy Murphy. Nice to see you, Nancy.
Oops. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Nancy Murphy, representing Hillsborough 12, the town of Merrimack. I also serve on the town council for the town of Merrimack, and before I start my testimony, wanted to just clarify a question that was raised earlier, whether or not the town uses brine, and the town does indeed use brine in the area that we're asking that brine be used. And the town will additionally use brine in other places as soon as we get the storage tank for that use. So we absolutely do. I've submitted testimony online, and I'd like to be able to read James Emery's testimony. So he's asked that I present that. He's the hydrogeologist who works with the MVD for the last 30 years, and he submitted a packet with some graphs that he thought it would be really important for people to be able to look at, because he said the visual is certainly, we got a lot of numbers, but the visual really shows why we're concerned. Mr. Emery said, I've provided groundwater consulting services to Merrimack Village District for more than 30 years, managed numerous source water protection grants issued by New Hampshire DES, which are focused on the problems of excessive salt use on roadways in Merrimack. The sodium and chloride levels measured in the local groundwater resources continue to rise and have become elevated to historic levels over the past several years. This has caused substantial harm to the local water utility, the Merrimack Village District. He supports the passage of SB 511 because other actions have not worked. And this bill requires that less salt be used by the NHDOT in the sensitive recharge areas of MVD's drinking water supply. As I think was mentioned, the MVD relies exclusively on groundwater to supply nearly 1 billion gallons of water annually to over 9,300 connections in the town. A series of high-yield wells are owned and operated by the MVD that provides groundwater located in and around the town of Merrimack. The MVD has already spent more than $20 million on treating PFAS in our drinking water, and we will be spending money in perpetuity. Over the past 30 years, sodium and chlorine levels have substantially increased in all MVD drinking water supply wells. This has been caused by the continual increase in the use of de-icing agents on local roads. As the table you have in hand, it's on page 2, I believe, shows sodium levels have risen over 1,000% since 1992 in one of the major drinking water production wells, and that's well 3, serving the town. Chloride has risen over 900% in that same time frame. In 2021, as Board of Commissioners Chair Don Preventure has shared, that MVD had to take that well offline due to staggering elevated chloride levels reaching 542 milligrams per liter and sodium reaching 300 milligrams per liter. Chloride has a recommended EPA and New Hampshire DES maximum contaminant level of 250 milligrams per liter, and EPA recommends that sodium remains below 60 milligrams per liter for drinking water. He asked, why not treat the water? Treatment costs to remove sodium and chloride from drinking water sources are far greater than PFAS removal or removal of other groundwater contaminants, such as VOCs, metals, and 1,4-dioxane combined, due to the reverse osmosis process required to accomplish this. And why is SB 511 so important to Merrimack? Due to the elevated levels of sodium and chloride in the local Merrimack aquifer and in production well 3, the MVD had to take well 3 offline. That well produced 1.5 million gallons per day, and it had to be replaced with MVD well 9. The overall cost to the MVD has exceeded $2 million. Additional production wells in the same Natticook Brook aquifer are currently being threatened by the salt loads being applied to the local highways. At this time, I would draw your attention to page 4 of the testimony Mr. Emery submitted. The continued heavy salting that occurs as a result of New Hampshire DOT's winter road maintenance at the intersection of Continental Boulevard and Industrial Drive have led to the highest chloride levels ever recorded in the Natticook Brook aquifer last year. The map there shows the location of MVD's production well 3 and monitoring well 3, located immediately downgraded to the NHDOT managed interchange of Industrial Drive and Continental Boulevard. Well 3 recorded a historic high level of 1,200 milligrams of chloride in 2023. As you can see by the graphs on page 4, sodium and chloride levels of the monitoring wells at 2 of the locations, down gradient to the New Hampshire DOT maintained interchange, have skyrocketed. The data shown on page 4 clearly indicate that based upon the average of 4 water samples taken annually over the course of the past 10 years, the average annual chloride measured in well 1 has now reached an exorbitant 1,000 milligrams of chloride, and the average annual sodium has reached 600. Simply put, we must reduce the mass quality of salt used in the critical sensitive groundwater use and recharge areas. Specifically, salt use must be reduced at the intersection of Continental Boulevard and Industrial Drive, which lies immediately upgraded gradient from MVD's production well 3. In order to succeed, we need the support of the NHDOT to reduce their salt use in this area, and Senate Bill 511 will help do that. This bill will require that the New Hampshire DOT focuses on using anti-icing approaches to winter road maintenance instead of de-icing, which will reduce the tonnage of salt used at this interchange and other areas in sensitive recharge areas. This will also decrease costs. This bill requires that New Hampshire DOT must move quickly toward using brine and liquid agents to reduce their overall overuse of crystallized salt. This bill requires calibration and detailed measurements of salt use that is made available to the local public and MVD for review. This bill requires that sufficient training and certification of SnowPro trained operators be in place for snow removal and road treatment at this sensitive groundwater recharge area, whether required by the state or not. And this bill will eliminate overlapping of plowing routes and double salting at this interchange, where often the applied salt gets plowed off the road into the aquifer. And it helps ensure that NHDOT cooperates and works with the MVD and the town of Merrimack to reduce salt use in the recharge areas of the Natticook Brook Aquifer. Respectfully submitted, James Emery. Thank you.
Thank you. With wearing your town administrator or town official hat for a moment, I think you heard some of the concerns about the specificity here and the practices and so on. Do you think that, as the chair kind of queried about that, were we to pass a bill that requires that there be a memorandum of understanding developed between DOT, the Merrimack Commission, and the town, and then laid out the areas that such an MOA should include, that would provide a sufficient legislative vehicle to get done what needs to be done?
I can't answer that on behalf of the town. My concern is that this is an issue that has been raised year after year and has not been addressed adequately. We're winding up where we're winding up now, which led us to the point where legislation was the option. I'm not sure. I think whatever we have to do to make this happen, I mean, as you know, Merrimack, we've been hard hit time and time again. And what is happening, and citizens are so frustrated because the damage is done to our community and our drinking water and groundwater by outside entities. In this state, in this issue, in this particular instance, it's the state. In another, it's an industrial polluter. The bottom line is the state doesn't fix it, and the polluter semi-addresses it. Who gets stuck with the bill? The MVD customers, the citizens of Merrimack. So I think people are frustrated. Health impacts, we've got health impacts from PFAS. We've got, anybody knows what health impacts are from excessive salt. So we're getting a double whammy, and I think this is the solution is it hasn't happened thus far, following the routes that one would think would be helpful. So the HB 511 I think was a result of that, just trying to ensure that we can count on some change.
Thank you. And I just, if I may, Madam Chair, say I hear everything you're saying about Merrimack, and and the salt, similar issues in Dover, and I just think that to use a bad metaphor, that these wells are part of the canary in the salt mine. And statewide, we can't. I mean, we're really facing a problem because unless climate change means we have no winter at all anymore, which isn't going to happen too soon. I don't see how we manage to keep applying salt for the next decades when this is that's happening. But what I'm concerned about, and I hope that maybe you and Senator Chanley and so on could work on, and I'll talk to DOT, is that I think it'd be more comfortable passing a bill that sets some dates certain to get an agreement, rather than, I look at some of these things here and I say, I don't know scientifically whether these numbers are the ones that actually are possible or reasonable here, and how are we supposed to know up here? But we can tell the people who know to get something done by a date certain. And I just hope that there'll be some conversation about taking that approach so we can get you a bill.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Any
Chair,
other, of
for
course,
indulging me.
always for you. Any other questions from the committee? I want to just make a comment. So for me, safety and health have to be paramount in everything. And naturally, the salt in for health is a problem. But we also have to have safety on the road. And I'm a little concerned by the over-prescriptiveness of the bill as well, just because I can't, if they're going to use something that's going to freeze over and then we have, accident or injury on the road. So I think we should take a closer look at the over-prescriptiveness of it and try to come up with something that would benefit all the way around, safety for drinking water and safety for the roads.
Thank you, Senator. I think that was part of the reason for it being so prescriptive. I think the MVD has looked into this, and I can't speak for them. I'm sure they can speak for themselves, but I think that was part of the effort that went into this bill, was what was it going to take to maintain public safety, both in terms of safety on transportation for transportation purposes, but also for public health. So again, I'm not an expert in that, but I know that was a primary consideration. We couldn't give up one for the other. And I know other states use brine, and we're not the only cold place. So I know it's been met with success in other places. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair will now call Representative Bill Boyd. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Transportation.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, through you to the members of the Transportation Committee. Okay, thank you. I apologize. Again, through you, Madam Chair, to the distinguished members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Bill Boyd. I represent Hillsborough 12 in the great town of Merrimack. I'm here to testify in favor of, I'm bad with numbers, I apologize. Well, I'm not bad with numbers, I'm just drawing it. 511. I'm here to testify in favor of 511. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman. I appreciate it. I want to amplify, to avoid redundancy, I want to amplify the previous comments that have been made by Chairman Provencher and the gentle lady from Merrimack as well. I want to thank them for bringing to your attention the level of frustration that the town of Merrimack has had through the years with the Department of Transportation. This isn't meant to be negative to Commissioner Castro. I have the utmost respect for him for his collegiality and his professionalism in running the department and the people that work in the department. But over the past several years, as it relates to DOT management of the roads and working with the town, there's, from my perspective, anecdotally, there's been reticence to engage the particular concerns that sometimes get brought to their attention. In this particular case, and I don't know if this has been brought up, and I apologize, I've been running back and forth. We did have a meeting with DOT back in September where we raised the specific concerns that are outlined in this particular bill. And I would suggest to you that the genesis of this particular bills is a consequence of having a meeting, pulling together, the powers that be, building bridges, addressing the issue, and not getting some semblance of resolution to the problem. The thing that comes to mind in looking at one of the emails that I have that was given to in response to the meeting that we had in September, the favorite phrases seems to be, "We will do our best." We will do our best. We want state trucks to be utilizing their technology to brine and plow into Industrial Boulevard and Continental Boulevard. Industrial, basically the response that I got from DOT, please bear with me for a second. I have the document here in front of me. Can state trucks be used to treat these roads? It is not practical for DOT to use only state roads on Industrial Drive. The department will do our best on Continental Boulevard. Determine our ability and resource needs for more consistently and aggressively pre-treating Continental Boulevard and Industrial Drive with Brown. The department will do our best. And then they go on to write to say the department is not staffed nor equipped to use brine during the storm, instead use granular salt. So here's a problem where the town of Merrimack, starting in 2014, we have 4.9 linear miles of state roadway that abut MVD property, predominantly well number 3. In 2014, the Department of Transportation expended 96.8 tons of salt. This is in 2014. Fast forward to the end of the fiscal year of 23, they expended 146.8 tons of salt in that particular year. The prior year, in 2022, 158 tons of salt were used on this particular stretch of roadway. So in the span of 10 years, we've seen salt used on this particular stretch of roadway increase by close to 30, 40%. And it's having, and as a consequence of this particular policy, it's having a direct impact on the ability for the MVD to be able to provide clean water to the community. Now, and if I speak out of turn, Don Wolf, please correct me, but Merrimack Village District, we have 9,000 houses, roughly 9,000 residential houses. We have a commercial component as well. MVD services roughly anywhere from 60 to 65% of that particular community providing drinking water. As Representative Murphy alluded to previously, we've been impacted by PFAS on the northeastern part of town. So we're getting pounded chemically by PFAS with some particular wells, and now we're getting pounded chemically in another part of town that's impacting, MVD's professional ability to provide clean potable water to the people that work, live, and hang out in Merrimack. And this isn't just residential; it's businesses, local restaurants, pubs. They rely on access to clean potable water. So I appreciate what Senator Ricciardi has said regarding about the bill being prescriptive. I agree with you; it's prescriptive, but there's an element of frustration here that my community has had for years, stemming back to before I even sat on the town council, when I was on the planning board. Excuse me, now I got a nosebleed. I apologize. Sitting. Going back to when I was on the planning board, the struggle we have had with DOT trying to synchronize a light at exit 11. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Excuse me, folks. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyway, I apologize for if my blarney is getting up, but having sat on the town council for 10 years and to answer your question, Senator Waters, and this is anecdotally, and it's basically a condensed version from ex parte conversations that I've had regarding responsibility. I mean, just 2 years ago, from a policy perspective, we fought the 2022 10-year transportation plan with the addition of that stretch of Industrial Boulevard going down to Route 101. We fought that. We don't want that because back in the day, this particular road was considered to be a feeder road to provide instead of 101 running west-east going directly into Nashua, provide a feeder road so the traffic could be able to go north and south and not be able to impact, I believe it's exit 8 down at Amherst Street. So having been part of that conversation as the town council, I can probably say with a fair degree of certainty that the sentiment that was expressed to me back then when I was on the council hasn't changed. And I honestly don't expect that to change. So I sincerely hope that the conversation that we're having today regarding the impact of sodium chloride on well 3 specifically and how our roads are treated in that particular town will build a bridge and hopefully foster greater anonymity, and hopefully maybe there isn't a need for this particular bill. Maybe there's a need to re-collaborate and figure out what's the best way to approach it. But absent that happening, and I do thank the sponsor, Senator Chandler, for doing this. What you have in front of you really is a culmination of frustration of, at least from our perspective, of us trying to show the problem, explain the problem, what we feel we need to do to fix it, and having it fall on deaf ears. So I appreciate the opportunity for I usually try to keep my talks very brief here, and I sincerely apologize. This is the first time that I've kind of pontificated just a little bit, but I thank the committee for their time and their attention, and happy to answer any questions that I can ably answer while nursing a nosebleed. Thank you.
Just one question.
Yes, Senator.
Would you, if this were not addressed and you've already closed well 3, are you in fear of closing another well?
I mean, here's the thing. My community, we had a drought. Okay, and I can't speak for MVD, so this is me as an MVD user. Let me do it that way, as an MVD user. I always get very worried that the decisions that MVD are making, and they're making good decisions. Let me be upfront. They're making good decisions. That the decisions that they're making for rate use potentially, could have some particular impact. Wells 4 and 5 were shut down when we were impacted by PFAS, and that forced MVD to pivot and to rely on some other wells to be able to meet the capacity for them to be able to meet the residential and commercial capacity of providing water. Thank God they were able to get through it. Thank God, and the vice chair serves with me on the New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Advisory Commission. Years ago, we were able to leverage some monies out of that trust fund to allow MVD to come up with a plant that is able to treat the PFAS. So that people now have, we now have a facility that treats that. I certainly don't want a facility on Greens Pond Road right now that's going to be distilling water coming out of well 3, because this is a remedy this is something that can be fixed cheaply. It doesn't, as much as I love infrastructure, as much as I would love to see something go up that's distilling water that we're able to continue to provide clean potable water, the easier Yankee, prudent fix, frugal fix is working with the powers to mitigate that impact in such a way so that the salt numbers come down and the sodium chloride numbers come down. I mean, that's what we're looking at the bottom line. I mean, there's a monitoring well at Dunkin' Donuts which intersects with Continental Boulevard and Industrial Boulevard. And again, if it's redundant, I do apologize. But the last test was in March of 2023. The sodium level was 260 milligrams per liter. The chloride was 1,200 milligrams per liter. And that's just in a monitoring well that's less than a year old. So we're not crying foul. We're asking for help. The community is asking for help to remedy the situation. So I sincerely hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you.
Just a little tip. You can go down to the nurse's office. Because of me, she keeps a bottle of vinegar there. It stops nosebleeds. It really does.
Is that akin to Windex?
I am
What's
Greek.
that?
They say the Greek in the Windex thing, but
I thank you for indulging
You're
me. I
welcome.
appreciate it.
okay. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 511? Okay. All right. Come right up.
That's okay, thank you. Appreciate you taking the last minute request. Thank you. Committee members, my name is Wolfram von Schön. You may just want to address me as Wolf. Bill Boyd here referred to me a minute ago. I am one of the MVD commissioners out of Merrimack. And together with Don Provencher, the chair, we've been all over this contamination issue in town here now for 6 years. Sodium chloride salt, obviously, is really a strenuous health burden for specifically elderly people in town, right? And those with heart conditions. And we're really not only talking about cost impacts for MVD, but really the health sector as well, right? The general public, just, not just the water situation, but just health impacts, right? And doctor bills and so on, medication, maybe even more than that. I did want to address something that maybe has not been made clear enough. The MVD water rates have been increasing by basically 100% in the last 5 years. 100%, right? And that is largely due to the contamination issues in town. One of them being, of course, PFAS, but the other one is sodium chloride because we had to replace a well. We put dollars behind that, but we didn't put that in reference of the increase that people have seen in their wallet over the last couple of years, very, very recently. Not implementing this bill would expose existing and even brand new MVD equipment and, wells and treatment facilities, millions of dollars of investments to become unusable, just like it happened to well 3. That is something we have to keep in mind. We just finished one of these treatment plants last fall, and we're risking it, right? We have to put that in perspective. We also need to remind ourselves, we're not just talking about MVD, we're talking about private wells owners. We're talking not just about really, obviously about Continental Boulevard, but it sets a precedence in the area as well. It creates attention, awareness of the issue. So there are actually public, next to the public wells, there's clearly also private and commercial and residential wells that are potentially affected. Maybe not right in this area because that area is well served by MVD, but in surrounding areas. A concern was brought up earlier by Senator Waters about safety, and I think about from you as well, Senator Ricciardi. Safety concerns on the roads are obviously something to be considered, but I would like to raise attention to one detail. I have lived in Europe, in Switzerland and Germany for many years, and most European countries, including those two, have largely done away with road salt application. They're basically only using brine whenever the weather conditions permit it. They have done that for the reasons that we're actually discussing here today, groundwater protection for the most part. And maybe it's a little bit simplistic approach, but it works for the German Autobahn at 100 miles per hour and higher. It should work at Continental Boulevard with 35 and 40 miles per hour.
And
Certainly,
Germany has some of the best, cleanest drinking water. I happen to know that.
it really does. Interestingly enough, not necessarily for PFAS. Interesting enough. But definitely for sodium chloride and some other contaminations. Either way, in the end, it's a matter of implementation. It's not a matter of not being safe. It's a matter of how it's being implemented. How is it being managed and planned for? That's what it boils down to, right? The really last point that I want to make is we really have to make no mistake here. We have citizens, elected officials, and the MVD. They have just spent 6 years of their lives fighting contamination town. 6 years of their life. Volunteer time, lost revenue for self-employed people, PTO for employees. We have spent efforts largely unsupported by others, not necessarily want to speak negatively about the state, but it took some years for everybody to pick up on that, and specifically, of course, the federal government. So we have spent 6 years of our life fighting this, and some of us even longer than that. We are now worried, sincerely worried, that the last 6 years are partially going down the drain, because the result of that fight has been these facilities that we have implemented and paid for, millions of dollars, dozens of millions of dollars in the end. Right, so it is extremely frustrating, extremely concerning to see this potentially float away because of something, as others have mentioned, so simple to solve as road salt. Right, there's technical alternatives, and maybe it's not as constrictive or restrictive as this bill currently proposes it to be, but any movement we can add to the dial, right, and that we can any way we can move the needle would be something that the town really needs to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. I will ask again, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 511? All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 511, and we will go right into opening the... Oh, sure. We'll have a 1-minute recess. Then we have. Right. Do what we can do. Oh, not too many. 3 minutes. Gotta remember to bring water with me. I had some coffee, now I'm dying of thirst.
The air seems so much drier too.
Yeah, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And like I can smell, your perfume smells good, but it's like clogging me
Oh,
up
yeah.
because it's strong.
Too much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, there's one takeaway that I keep getting with all of this because I've had this experience myself. It just seems like the department and doesn't follow through and the problems just grow. I think there needs to be some sort of restructuring in that department.
We have a seriously underfunded department, seriously. We have not raised the tolls on toll booths.
We need to do something about it.
You know, and we're, thank goodness we get the federal money. I mean, we got $1.2 billion from Biden for the roads, you know, and if we haven't gotten that, would anything be paved in this state? You know, so I mean, yeah, it's just,
It's a
we're
problem.
way underfunded and we haven't raised the gas tax. You know, I mean, I'm against taxes, you know, but we are living the consequences
Well,
of their not, I mean, these are good people who work.
oh, you're welcome.
But,
Oh,
but, you know, we're living the consequences of an underfunded department, you know? But I think on this one, yeah, we can get there. but-
okay. Good afternoon. We will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 512. Hello again, Senator Chanley.
Good afternoon again.
You sure don't want to be on Senate Transportation? You're an honorary member. you know?
What's very
You are.
funny is I was with several of the folks in this room in education, presenting in education with your chair in commerce, and here we all are back again this afternoon for the second time. And it's a wonderful committee to be in front of, so I thank you and I thank your chair. For the record, my name is Shannon Chandley. I am Senator for District 11, which includes the towns of Amherst, Merrimack, Wilton, and Milford. I'm here for the purposes of introducing Senate Bill 512, which is relative to the 10-year highway plan. In particular, this bill addresses Route 101, and it calls upon the DOT to put in the 10-year highway transportation plan the suggestions that were made in the 2002 report on Route 101. We've been here before. You've heard this. You heard from me several times. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I do want to remind you a little bit. You know, SB 512 is intended to require the DOT to include in the 10-year transportation plan the improvement measures to address chronic severe crashes on Route 101 from a point in Bedford to the intersection of routes 101 and 101A in Milford. The plan must include physical separation of traffic lanes that are traveling in opposite directions. The plan should follow the recommendations as set forth in the 2002 study of Route 101 safety. And I'm really sad to report this, but there have been a number of severe crashes over the years that led to tremendous injury and death. And right before we were all sworn in 2022, a person was killed on Route 101 in this area. When we were debating this bill and the recommendation from the committee was to put it into interim study, right that week, another person was killed. And as we were filing our bills this session, I just returned. I'd been traveling. I came back on the 26th of November to learn that a person on this portion of road had been killed on 101 on the 24th of November. You know, I don't say that implementing these measures would have saved each of these people. What I can say is that the effects of severe crashes would be reduced. This stretch of Route 101 is tremendously hazardous. In the 21 years that I have lived, well, actually now a little more than 21 years that I've lived in Amherst, there have been dozens and dozens of serious crashes. And the trauma to not just the victims and their families, but to police, firefighters, and paramedics is immeasurable. As you recall, at the last time we looked at this bill, we had many people from law enforcement, paramedics, fire departments come here and testify because they could vividly recount the trauma that they had seen on this roadway. Again, right now, the only thing separating those two lanes of traffic is a tiny little strip of paint. We need more. We don't need a buffer, we need a barrier. You know, I really can't say enough to acknowledge the efforts of DOT. Commissioner Cass and other members of the team have been wonderful. They've held public meetings in Amherst and Milford to discuss this. It's been very helpful, but I think ultimately what they need from us is direction. We need to say to them, yes, barriers are required. Please implement the requirements as they were laid out in the 2002 plan. I don't want to spend lots of money rehabbing Route 101 only to fail to solve the problem. I think that we need to invest the dollars and we need to solve the problem. Let's put our work to good use and make a serious difference on Route 101 in this area. It is 2.5 times, I believe that figure is from DOT, 2.5 times more dangerous than similar roads throughout the state. And so I'm not asking for something special. I'm saying there are special circumstances here and we need to address them. Thank you so much for your time and your attention to this issue again.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We will now call Toby Reynolds. Yes, good afternoon, welcome. You can both state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Toby Reynolds. I am the Assistant Director of Project Development at the Department of Transportation. With me today is Jason Ayotte, who is a project manager, also with project development at the DOT. We're just going to briefly speak about a couple of activities or a few activities that we have underway and in planning along New Hampshire Route 101. And also wanted to take just a minute to, and I'm sure the committee understands that the state's 10-year transportation plan is in the draft development for the next round. It's currently, well, over the past several months, we've conducted several public hearings with the public, and it is now in its draft form with the governor. The 10-year plan is fiscally constrained as it stands today. And with that, I'd like to ask Jason to speak about the projects that we have on New Hampshire 101.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committees. As Toby said, my name is Jason Ayotte. I'm the project manager for what we know as the 13692D Milford project, which is currently in construction. That's where I met many of the individuals in this room, Senator Chanley, Captain Buchanan, as we were presenting different alternatives for the stretch that we know as the Milford bypass last summer, and we were able to advertise that for construction. It was awarded to Continental. The project's about $5 million, and the intent is essentially to resurface, as Senator Chanley said, it is a buffer. we're going to place basically a 6-foot wide median buffer with rumble strips on both sides to help reduce the lane departure crashes. We also have a 13692E project in Amherst that we have just kicked off with the same safety engineers that helped us sort of craft these interim measures on the 101 Milford bypass. We are hoping to finalize those alternatives by summer, June, July of this year, where we can then go back out to the town of Amherst and kind of identify the safety measures, countermeasures that we think are appropriate along the stretch of 101 between Blueberry Hill Road and Camp Road in Amherst. And the last project is entering the 10-year plan this year. It's the 13692F project in Bedford that was put forward as the most significant project by the Southern New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission. Right now, it's at the end of the 10-year plan, and that's right now basically an engineering study to help identify the constraints between the town of Amherst town line and what was the I guess the Wallace Road intersection project that we did and finished in 2017. So happy to answer any additional questions.
Senator Waters?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. And so, you know, we are going back, we've been over this several times, and we were going back 20 years to the recommendation that there be a median barrier there. And so, were there no physical constraints, would a median barrier in this section be the most reasonable way to save lives?
It would be one of the measures to save lives. It certainly would reduce the number of crashes crossing the center line today. We would also likely increase crashes with strikes against the median barrier. So we did conduct a study to evaluate the median barrier versus the median buffer. It is the most likely to stop head-on crashes. I'm not going to disagree with that.
If I may follow up.
Of course.
And I don't mean to ask this as an unfair question, but I just, you know, curious about how these things get decided. In that kind of calculation between the two, do you have a number that is the value of a human life lost that is used to make that distinction between how much to spend on the project?
We didn't look at it that way. There are studies out there that suggest that a fatality could be up to $12 million. So that is part of the calculation that we used. And we did look at how the countermeasures would reduce injuries or save lives, and that was a factor. One of the major factors in our decision for the Milford bypass this past summer was we were able to effectively treat or put countermeasures for about 4.5 miles of the Milford bypass, as opposed to less than a mile if we were to install a permanent barrier. So that was the factor that we were looking at, really the value in the additional mileage on 101.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. We will now call Representative Dan Leclerc. Good afternoon. Welcome, Representative.
One of the few that have said my name correctly. Usually it comes out Leclerc, of course, it's how it looks, but you know how the French people, I like it. So, again, we appreciate you hearing this again, and there's not a whole lot more that I would add to Senator Chanley's testimony, except the frustration. Thank you. Except the frustration part. Like you said, Senator Waters, this 10-year study's been going on since 2002. And I've been out of school a long time, but it's a little bit more than 10 years. And what I just heard was that at the end of the 10-year plan, there's going to be another study. It's a little bit frustrating. I can appreciate the work. I understand it. But I think there seems to be enough data has been collected over the last 22 years, and it's time to act. Rumble strips might wake people up and maybe bring them back into their lane, but I agree with Senator Chanley that something more should be done to help save lives on that road. So that's really all I have.
Thank you. Any Questions for the representative? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
listening. Thanks.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 512? Oh, you can come forward. Thank you. Captain Buchanan, nice to see you.
Good afternoon. My name's Chris Buchanan. I'm a captain with Amherst Fire. This is, I believe, the 8th or 9th time that I've testified about Route 101 and the severe frequency with which fatal accidents occur, 240% higher mortality rate compared to comparable roads around the state, as was identified in the 2002 corridor study. I've gone to 12 or 13 10-year plan hearings over my time with the fire department. I've gone to National Regional Planning Commission meetings identifying projects for the state 10-year plan. I've gone to House transportation hearings for over a decade, Senate as well. I've worked with Republicans and Democrats to try to identify a solution for this. The corridor study clearly identified what the solution is. It's to finish what was started in the 1960s. This was supposed to be a divided highway. It just wasn't finished. And then it was forgotten. And when I started on the fire department, my first crash, as you've all heard, was a 6-car crash on Route 101 where a 19-year-old and 21-year-old were just obliterated. And these sorts of things have happened frequently since we were here last year. We've had another one in Amherst specifically where someone's top half was separated from their lower half. There were crashes in Milford that I didn't go to, and Bedford as well, various things that frequently end up being fatal. The fact of the matter is that there is a solution here. It's been known for a very long time, but systems are not in place to implement them. The Department of Transportation is filled with great people who have been trying very hard to come up with what they can with budgetary constraints. I've met with several commissioners and Jason Ayotte and Dr. Gross, who have all been working on this project for a long time, and I have great respect for them. They've been trying to come up with something to improve the situation with little money. And while I think what they're working on is an improvement, it is just a Band-Aid. It's nothing against what they're working on. I think it should be implemented, but what would be better is what is before you today. I believe that one of the most impactful things that you can do this year in this legislative session is to vote yes on this, that you will clearly implement something that will save dozens, if not hundreds of lives over time. And I strongly encourage you to do that. How many times has this come before the legislature, House or Senate? DOT and systems always point to someone else. DOT usually says the legislature needs to act in order to get this done. The legislature usually points to DOT and say, follow the 10-year plan system. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again every other year since I have gotten involved in this process. If you know Route 101 east of Manchester, it used to be the same problem, but there happened to be influential people who lived along the corridor when it was known as the Highway of Death and got the money to actually make it a divided highway, and no longer is that a problem. And the only reason why that didn't happen west of Manchester is because the legislature didn't act. You have the opportunity to solve this problem. Only you can do it. No one else will do it. DOT can't swing it. They said it's fiscally constrained, the 10-year plan. It is. So they can't make it happen. Only you can. So please make it happen.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. And I'll ask again, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 512? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 512, and we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 466.
It is I again.
On we go.
On we go. It was intentional, though, out of respect for her time, to have her do them all in one day.
No, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. It was intentional. I wanted to,
And much appreciated. Okay, remind me, this is 566, correct? 466. Yeah, because I have 566 and 466.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and again, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Transportation Committee. For the record, my name is Shannon Chandley, and I serve the people of Senate District 11, Amherst, Milford, Merrimack, and Wilton. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 466, which is relative to allowing the Department of Transportation to erect sound barriers upon the request of municipalities. And let me explain to you how this came about. The Effie Everett Turnpike is being widened and changed somewhat. And Commissioner Cass from DOT and his team joined me in Merrimack to sort of give an update on what was going on and where things stood and what folks could expect in the project. And that was very, very much appreciated. It was appreciated by the people of Merrimack, certainly by me. And I hope that the folks from DOT heard the concerns of the people in the room. It was really a very good meeting, and I am grateful to Commissioner Cass for hosting that, or for being part of that meeting. One thing we heard over and over again was people's concern about the sound that they would now hear in their homes and yards due to the expansion of the turnpike. People are really concerned. They're concerned about their daily well-being, their quality of life, and certainly their property values. The folks from DOT did a wonderful job of explaining that certain places did not qualify for sound barriers, even though the people would like those erected. And they didn't, there are standards, and I understand that there has to be a certain standard. You have to have a formula from which you work to make these determinations. And accordingly, a number of places did not meet that standard. I get that. One of the things we're not sure, though, I think that is worthy of further consideration is by how much did they not meet that standard? So that is not addressed in this bill, but I would certainly not object if people thought that should be included. So given what I heard at that meeting and people's concerns, I went and sort of did some research on my own to figure out what has happened in the past. I know that folks from Portsmouth, Bedford, Nashua, at least those three communities have put forward bills to put up sound barriers, and most of them have not gone very far. You may have heard some of them originated in the House. Since 1998, I believe there have been, I think it's 13 bills that dealt with sound barriers, and most of those bills haven't advanced. In 2016, there was a bill in the House which said, okay, if people don't meet the requirements for building a sound barrier, let's have a way for the towns to say, well, we'll pay a portion. And that bill suggested an 80-20 match between the towns. The town would pay 20, the state would pay, or the federal, the state would pay either through monies collected or an 80% match. So I had this bill drafted, and I'm going to go back to the bill. And what this bill does is it establishes a program by which people in the various towns can say, we need a sound barrier. We believe this is important for our town. We believe it's important for our neighborhoods. And we as a town are willing to acknowledge the importance of this and put forward 30% of the cost. Now, that number is one I chose based on the idea simply that we do these kinds of matching programs, and 30%, it would be very hard, but perhaps not impossible, for these towns to raise the full amount. The other funds, the 70% would come from one of two places, either federal funds that are available or from a fund created by using some of the rooms and meals tax that would be, use the money collected along the turnpike. Now, I recognize this is not perfect. I also recognize we have a situation that so far we haven't found a solution. This is my proposal. I think it gives people who have been denied sound barriers an option, and it gives, it asks the state and the municipality to share the cost. As I mentioned earlier, this does not in any way address the standard which the town might want to meet. I think they're not going to agree to raise and appropriate 30% if they don't have a good reason to. But I did think perhaps that's something that we would want to contemplate going forward, is do we say certain standards? And I actually think there was a bill at some point that was suggested a study to kind of look and figure out, well, what do we do if people don't meet the standard but they're close? I don't think that, I'd have to look to see where things went with that. But so that's, this is the program I'm suggesting. It's a program that I think would at least be there for towns like Bedford, Merrimack, and any other communities where they suffer the consequences of road widening and noise pollution. So thank you very much for your attention.
Any comments? Okay, I have a couple. Well, first, I applaud you for trying to find a solution. You know I'm battling this throughout my district as well. I feel that the problem in my mind is that when it is a state road, then people have lived there first, and the state is negatively impacting people's homes, which is their castle, that remedy should come from the state as part of the cost of the project. Shouldn't fall on the taxpayers in the towns that people live in. And although I applaud your efforts, Senator Chanley, I do not think it's a good idea to take the meals and rooms money that's really there for property tax relief in the towns and a benefit to the taxpayers in the towns, that this burden belongs on the state and the Department of Transportation. Because again, if you're making a project, if you're building a house, okay, and you plan and you budget, and you know you usually go over budget, there's something wrong with our system with the planning of these projects. And really, the state has to be a good neighbor to the people and their homes and where they live. So it's more of a comment, it's more applauding you, but the meals and rooms piece, I can't go with that one, I'm sorry.
Well, certainly, I'm open to finding other ways of funding this. This was one thing, because it does, my sense was that using the meals and rooms tax, this is a form of relief to the community taxpayer. But I take your point, and I certainly am open to finding other ways to fund this kind of project. I do really think it would be helpful to the people of the towns if they could move forward in their towns to try to address the problems they're having. So, but thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. And before we continue with other people who would like to speak, Commissioner Cass, could you come forward and answer some questions for us? Thank you. Of course.
For the record, William Cass, Commissioner of the DOT. I apologize. I meant to sign up, but I'll answer whatever questions the committee has. So.
Senator Waters?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for for coming up. And I was trying to remember in the midst of time when Chairman Stiles was head of transportation, I was on there, and we did look at this and try to come up with a statewide number and hundreds of millions of dollars, and the issue doesn't go away. So here's my question to you. Do you think it would be a possible or a useful approach to have legislation which enjoined the department to develop a proposal for a program to deal with, and we got constraints by the federal highway because there are standards by which we cannot use federal money for this kind of thing. And so I guess that, if that was a practical approach to have you work on a proposal, because, and that might be an opportunity to look at what is the potential backlog here, because we probably got to do this. When the cars are all electric, we don't have to worry about this anymore. It's all done. It's won't be any noise. We're good. But that's, future. And I don't know whether it'd be better to have separate legislation, or would it make sense to try to work with Chairman McConkey about an amendment in the 10-year plan that the House could put in. I mean, we can put amendments, but it's better if it happens over there. That would empower, in the context of the 10-year plan, to develop that and potentially find a way of funding whatever program you come up with over the 10 years of a 10-year plan. So I'm just speculating. I mean, I wanted to get your opinion as to, is there an approach that you think would make sense for DOT rather than us continuing to pass bills that say, do this one, do that one. We send it to our Senate Finance, and who knows, whatever. But what are we going to do?
I think we have a lot of the data. So when this issue had come up several years ago, I believe at the bill on T-Berry Lane, Mr. Evans had given some of the backlog. We did a statewide assessment of all the primary highways, and from a higher level did a noise assessment to get just that, what you were talking about, is what the magnitude of the problem would be. Let me take one step back. This bill, as I understand, if I read it, is specifically targeted for areas where there isn't a major project going on. Where there is a major project going on, we do look at noise impacts, and we do build and construct noise barriers in accordance with our policy. And I think, as we talked about last week, our policy does have some certain thresholds, both in terms of noise and in terms of cost effectiveness, and we've been very consistent in applying that. This bill is if I read it correctly, is really geared toward a program where there aren't significant improvements going on the highway, but there are noise concerns. We call that a Type 2 program. Type 1 is when noise barriers are built along with a major reconstruction project. Previous studies along this issue have led to, we had priorly revised our policy to adopt a Type 2 noise policy that would facilitate something like this. The crux of it has always been that the Type 2 noise policy hasn't been funded. So that's some background, a short answer to your question. We have a lot of data. I can make some proposals. What has come down to in terms of a Type 2 noise policy has been funding resources to fund it. And that could be, other states do use federal funds to fund, some limited amount of money to prioritize and fund Type 2 noise barriers. We had several years ago made a proposal because a number of these areas, like you said, Merrimack and ones in Portsmouth and other areas are along the turnpike system. We had made there was a discussion about a toll increase that would support a capital program and a Type 2 noise policy that wasn't, it didn't end up being supported. So the short answer is yes, we can provide some recommendation or some outline, either in conjunction with this bill or, like you said, with the 10-year plan on some suggestions for programs to address this. It does come down to, I think we have the data, we have the wherewithal. It does become a matter of choice, a matter of prioritization, a matter of funding. So.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
So, let's say that you had a program and found for the, the type 2, and then there was a decision to try to designate a certain amount of federal funding towards it.
Mm-hmm.
The turnpike system, I don't know. I mean, there might be some ways that such a program would develop. But I'm asking that as a pretext for the question about what do you think about in such a program having some kind of municipal match?
Our existing type 2 noise policy does require, I'll have to refresh myself. I'm not sure if it requires, but it strongly suggests or prioritizes municipal support in terms of both funding and also willingness to look at land use planning in the vicinity of a highway, zoning and land use stuff, so that you don't have dense development right up against the highway that would require, or to install or to see that there are buffers between developments associated to the highway and things like that. So that is part and parcel of our noise policy. Municipal support, both financially, I believe, and in terms of some land use planning to
So we have kind of
look
a
to the
shell
future.
program, but without the
Yes.
funding, we haven't been able to operationalize.
That's
it.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll get some conversation about how we might proceed.
Sure.
And with the sponsor.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. Any other questions? Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
The chair will call Representative Nancy Murphy. Come back.
We meet again. Good afternoon, Senator Ricciardi and honorable committee members. I'm going to be really brief. I'm Nancy Murphy, Hillsborough County 12 of the town of Merrimack. I just want to say that I support this bill and see it as enabling legislation that would allow municipalities the ability to put something like this on a warrant article and leave it up to the people. This was an issue that was raised at a public hearing that Senator Chanley coordinated and hosted in the town of Merrimack. And sound barriers were a big concern, and that was the desire that we do something. So this is a step. I know it probably needs some work, and I think the input that we've heard today is good. But I just want to say I'm in support. That's
Okay,
it. Thank you.
Representative Murphy, so each individual town wouldn't need state legislation to put a warrant article on their ballot. And the voters vote for it. If you wanted to do it through your own town, it would be only if you were expecting the state to partake in it.
Right. I was thinking. I mean, I can't imagine the towns would have the funding to.
Unless it's a type 2, I don't know, but I just wanted to bring that out.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, we will now call Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the esteemed members of the Transportation Committee. Again, my name is Bill Boyd, representing Hillsborough 12 in the town of Merrimack. I support the bill. I want to amplify the previous comments made by Senator Chanley and Representative Murphy. One of the things I would ask that you consider as a part of it, I'm a little bit of a geek right now, but this is the 2018 DOT noise report from Exit 8 up to I-293 that provided a comprehensive evaluation of noise as it relates to the Evi Everett Turnpike going through Merrimack. It's a very informative document. The only challenge that I have with it is it doesn't tell me the times that the analysis was being done on a particular, on, at a given time in a particular neighborhood. So if we're going to contemplate enabling legislation regarding sound barriers, it should be contemplated that a corresponding noise report be included to basically buttress the need for a particular sound barrier and also provide the anecdotal evidence as to the date, the place, and the time, where ambient noise levels are not as optimal for a given area as it might be during other parts of the day. So that might be getting a little bit into the weeds, but I felt it was worth pointing out that, you know, again, this noise report serves as a blueprint for how we strategically place sound barriers in the state, and I would hope that you might be able to figure out a way to incorporate in one way, shape, or form. That being said, I do support the bill.
Thank you. Any questions from the members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair will call Donald Provencher. Okay. All right. How about Representative Rosemary Rung? Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Representative Rosemary Rung. I represent the town of Merrimack, which is Hillsborough 12. And I think I'm going to come back tomorrow and put a little bit of maybe some wax on this chair. It's been kind of loud, but I want to speak in favor of Senate Bill 466. I live near the area, the most impacted neighborhood that's been affected by the widening of the Everett Turnpike. And I was actually at the DOT meeting several years ago when they first presented the widening project to our community. And back then there were people that were very concerned about the noise impact. And they learned even then which neighborhoods would qualify for sound barriers and which others weren't. And one community even went and paid for their own engineer to come in and confirm DOT's numbers and prove that they were not right. And so now they do qualify for a sound barrier. And I do have issues with the model that DOT uses. Their vector, it calculates on the backyard, figuring that everyone entertains in their backyard, and that's where they should measure. But many people use their front yard, and the front yard does contribute to their quality of life. So at the with the widening project and some concern by the public, Senator Chanley did hold a meeting on October 4th with the public and members of DOT. And I especially want to convey my gratitude to Commissioner Cass for being there. But it was clear that these neighborhoods, even though they may have been close, they did not meet the threshold. And so we looked at, well, what alternatives could there be? And I had had a conversation with Ms. Wendy Johnson, who's the project leader on the widening, and she did say there is room to build a sound barrier if there was ever a decision to build one. So it got me thinking with Senator Chanley about how could we make this happen, because in that stretch, and I'm sure all along the winding project, there were many, many trees that were taken down, and in the Back River Road neighborhood, which was a really nice kind of a starter middle class neighborhood, hundreds and hundreds of homes in there. You would take Back River Road, a tree-lined street, to get to any side street. Well, now with the trees being removed, you can see the highway, and it's more of a frontage road than a neighborhood road. And so that widening project, regardless of the sound impact, has really changed the character of that area of Merrimack. And I support this bill because it does give local control to towns like Merrimack to protect the quality of those neighborhoods. If Merrimack had the opportunity to contribute funding for sound barriers, they could then recover that character of Back River Road. Not only would it decrease the sound, but it would remove that visual busyness of seeing all that traffic go back and forth. And to your point, Senator Ricciardi, you mentioned earlier about meals and rooms tax is meant to reduce property taxes. But I actually think this kind of bill protects property values because it gives a town the opportunity to protect the erosion of property values that a widening project like the Turnpike has on communities. These houses are not going to be as valuable as they were before the widening project. It's instead of facing a tree-lined neighborhood street, where now people are looking across the street and seeing all this traffic going up and down the highway. So I think it allows towns the opportunity to protect property values, and by doing so, by protecting their property values, protecting the tax revenue that comes from that property. So in the need, it with the higher property, even though people, it does contribute to the value of the tax base. So I just hope that you support this bill or some remedy for communities like Merrimack, who are seeing such an impact in the character of their community, and also in the impact on the individual homeowners and families who live in those communities. So thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your
Okay,
testimony.
thank you very much.
And we have Keen. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Keen Ming Wong, Tax Policy Counsel with the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. The department does not have a position on this bill. However, we were asked to prepare a fiscal note for this bill, and I just handed out a fiscal note quick guide for what we've prepared. Basically, I'm not going to read through this quick guide, but I just want to summarize a few concerns that the department had noted on the bill. Firstly is, and basically we have four concerns. One is the confidentiality of the transfer of the funds from the M&R, the meals and rooms tax into the fund itself. The number of operators in the noted area is very nominal, and the department has a concern is concerned with the confidentiality of all taxpayers. With this transfer of the monies from the M&R fund is collected, and specifically this bill identifies the location of the operators, it might lead to the release of information in regards to the business operations of those operators in that area. So that's something that that maybe some review of the confidentiality might requirements would be proper. The next point that we wanted to highlight was the municipal fund transfer. This is a transfer of funds from the M&R revenue to the municipal funds, and this is provided in RSA 78-A colon 26. This is in regards to the transfer of funds back to their municipalities. From what we see, the way the bill was written, it would probably be a reduction to the transfer to the municipal funds, but it's not really very clear in the bill. Probably if this bill is to be approved and passed, probably some additional language in the M&R statute, RSA 78-A, should be amended to take into account the transfer of the funds out of the M&R revenue to the barrier funds first, and then to calculate the municipal fund transfer. So some kind of amendment probably might be needed in the current statute for M&R RSA 78-A. The other point that the DRA noted was the treatment, or the lack of the treatment on potential refunds of M&R or the rejection of MNR payments that due to insufficient funds. So when operators submit payments, meals and rooms payments to the DRA, the MNR, the operator could potentially turn around and submit an amended return and say, okay, yeah, we've kind of over reported, overpaid, we want to seek a refund. Or they might have submitted the return with the payment. However, there's insufficient funds in the payment, and then we reject the payment. The current proposed legislation does not contemplate that situation in terms of how, if the funds were already transferred to the barrier fund, how is the money going to be recouped back to be transferred back to the operators? So probably some kind of additional language might be good there. And the final item that we wanted to highlight is the effective date of the proposed legislation. Currently, it says effective July 1, 2024. For anything relating to taxes, we usually have a taxable period start date. So it would be probably less confusing for operators as well as administrators to specify that, okay, potentially maybe, for an example, maybe specifying that the effective period of the legislation is for starting taxable periods, taxable period starting on or after July 1 of 2024, because each month is a taxable period for meals and rooms purposes. And that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Comments or questions from the committee?
Thank you.
I just want to go back to the meals and rooms because that's what you focused on. So
Yep.
for those who don't know, my first term in the Senate, I restored the 2-decade broken funding for the meals and rooms. And I really don't, it's a slippery slope to the towns across the state when you start tampering with it. And it's all now in a dedicated fund and going, it's millions of dollars to cities and towns. I believe we have to find a solution to the noise barrier problem, but I do not think the meals and rooms is the right solution for this.
We will, the DRA, as I mentioned before, the DRA does not have a position on the meals and rooms tax. However, if whatever that's passed and if it goes with this way, we would still administer the way we should administer it. The calculations for the meals and rooms is a bit complicated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay, thank you for your testimony. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 466? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 466.
Move exec.
Second,
Second?
all those in favor of going to executive?
Aye.
Aye. Could I see a motion? Have a motion. Sorry, it's been a long.
You want to go first, Bob?
Yeah, I have to. I move ought to pass on Senate Bill 465, and I have an amendment I'd like to introduce.
Second. Okay, that's good. Okay,
And I'd like to introduce amendment, which you all should have, 0100.
I'll second.
all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
And
And just to briefly touch on the bill, we all heard the bill, the importance of it, the need for it, the loss of life that we've heard happened. And this bill would just update our move over law so that a stopped or standing vehicle is included in the law and put us more in line with what the nation is doing. That.
So now you can move. Ought to pass as amended.
Now I move ought to pass as amended.
I'll second.
all those in favor of ought to pass as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move consent.
So moved.
Second?
Senator Fenton, do you want to take that
I
one
will
out?
take it out.
Okay.
We're gonna vote consent.
Oh, all those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
And, Madam Chair, I will, move, Senate Bill 467. Pass, and I have an amendment.
Okay, I'll second that.
And you'll see, this is the injury prevention bill, Senate Bill 467. And as we suggested in the hearing, that this is a great, an important thing, but perhaps the better way to go is with a decal. And Senator Ricciardi spoke with the sponsor and who agreed that this is a good way to go. So what the amendment does is just by usual procedure, it would authorize a decal and name the Injury Prevention Center as the needed nonprofit to be the designee for the fund. So I will move Amendment 0095S.
Okay, we
Second.
second. Okay. Now we will take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
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 And I'll move 467 as amended.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll move consent.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to,
We'll take that one out.
oh,
I don't care.
I'll take it.
Senator Ward, you care about keeping people healthy, don't you? All right.
okay, well, Senator Ward, thank you.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to pass Senate Bill 580.
Second.
Does everybody need a moment? Are we good?
So, Madam Chair, the understanding would be that, here we are, a noise barrier, and we're gonna make a righteous noise.
Yes, we are.
And the idea would be that recognizing that this is an ongoing issue, that we could, as a policy committee, pass this, understanding it's gonna go to finance, and we will be perhaps joined in finance by some other proposals around this issue. Is that your sense of it?
That is absolutely spot on, Senator Waters.
And it would tee us up for the 10-year plan to have a policy bill.
So I will ask all those in favor of Senate Bill 580, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay? Move consent.
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. While we're in executive session, are there any other
Do you
bill?
want to take that one out?
Yes, I'll take it out. While we're in executive session, are there any other bills any of you would like to discuss or go over or pass, or we good?
If I may.
Yes.
Just to kind of follow up on what we do with these hearings. It seems to me, excuse me. Thank you for reminding me. It seems to me on the salt reduction one, that what would be helpful is if the sponsors and MVD and the town and the department could get together. And what I think the parameters would be that there would be, that we could have an amendment that would say that we would ask for a memorandum of understanding by a date certain with certain criteria to be included in it. And I just want to say that public, I think it'd be a way to go. And then on the noise barrier one, what bill number was that?
That was 466.
All right, let me get back to that because I had some notes.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say it while
While the public is,
while the commissioners here in particular.
okay.
Okay, so we have this level 2 kind of concept that is actually in statute in a certain way. So what I had imagined there, Madam Chair, was that we could have an amendment that would require a planning proposal for the existing level 2 criteria that would include planning and recommendations for funding, and that such an amendment would actually create a fund, so we'd have that vehicle, and then potentially authorize the use of federal funds and Turnpike funds as, as determined by the department. And then that municipal matching program would be there. And I think best to say that the willingness of a municipality to do match would be a criteria for the ordering of selection of projects. And then the last thought I had, and again, this is something the commissioner could discuss, but it occurred to me that we might have an opportunity for that fund to say that any lapses that occur on other projects of the DOT might automatically go in here rather than cycling back through the capital budget and other things to be repurposed, because maybe this would be a way to suggest we'd have some predictability, and we could look at how many lapses over a given year. And again, I just cooked up in my fevered brain, Commissioner, but I'm just trying to think it would be helpful if we had some, if we were to try to do something, that we had some realistic kind of suggestions about how we're going to fund this. So I just want to throw it out and we'll talk, but I wanted to just get that, that's where I thought maybe we could go on that, because we're not going to do what's in here, I think. So
Senator Waters.
One point, I know on federal projects, we have a project agreement. That's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like a contract.
right.
We don't necessarily have the discretion on those lapse funds, so if there are, at the end of the day, when we final audit a federal project and there's
Yeah, it is,
money
yeah.
left in that, it goes back into the
Right.
federal program, it doesn't go somewhere else. So there are restrictions on the federal fund, restrictions on how those funds.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just a question,
Yes.
Commissioner. Did anything ever happen at the federal level about being able to sell toll credits? I know we had that discussion, right? That potentially.
Yes,
The federal
it-
delegation.
It was authorized as part of the IIJA, and I think it's a little lagging, but that authorization, Federal Highway or USDOT Federal Highway was supposed to establish some rules on how it would work. I know Senator Shaheen's office has been asking about it as well, too. She was a prime
You see why I
sponsor.
bring it up, that
Yeah.
if that program is authorized, could we say a certain percentage of our toll, I mean, we use toll credits, but
Mhm.
we have a lot of them potentially. Could a certain percentage of them be designated to be sold to fund this fund?
They could.
Beats me.
Yep, it could
But
be.
that might be.
That,
you see what I'm
those
just
would
trying
end
to
up being
get at?
essentially
What
state
can we-
funds, right.
Can we pick something that will?
Sure.
So,
Some ideas, yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
for indulging
Oh,
that
no, I wanted to
little
thank you,
colloquy.
Senator Waters, because it's good that you're addressing this now, and it gives Commissioner Cass a little bit of homework. And does anyone else have anything to add before we conclude?
I think we have to move.
Yeah.
I move to leave executive session.
All right. All right, all those in favor of leaving executive session, say aye.
Aye.
And may I have a motion to adjourn for the day?
So moved.
All right, second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Good session. We did it.
And I know you need.
I expect some tea here.